Good morning, Martin.
Hi, good morning, Marcus.
Very well that you're there. Everything worked well with coming in?
Oh, yeah.
Super. So you're the first after my introductory words and looking forward for your address.
Thanks very much, Marcus. Yeah, I look forward to it too.
See you later.
Yep, good. Talk to you shortly.
Yeah. Oh, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Ernst.
Morgen.
Good morning, Marcus.
Oh, good morning. Who was that?
This is Gerard Mullally in Cork.
Oh, good morning, Gerard.
Hi.
We have not met personally. Great that we do now.
Well, we'll know each other a little bit better after this morning.
I'd say we will. Great. Super. Very early morning for you, is it?
It's 7:30.
Yeah. So, thumbs up. Thanks a lot for being here.
All right, it's past on my clock.
Good morning, Ed.
Hi, Marcus.
Yeah.
Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay,
Good morning.
very good. So a warm welcome, everyone, to the second session for today. We've got an action-packed day coming up today again with a lot of interesting and different types of sessions. And we've just had Japan on the previous one, which was a very exciting view on foreign labor in Japan and SDGs and well-being. And so I'm sure your session will connect very well to this, Marcus. And the floor is yours.
Thanks a lot, Ernst. And good morning. Warm welcome from Austria to everyone here. This is our first session from the new Austrian chapter, so we are really grateful to be here. We are being handed over the program lead for the next 2 hours till 10:30 by Japan, who in their afternoon was already talking about the SDGs beneath other topics. What we will do too. Here where I am sitting is Austria in the morning, and it's even earlier in Ireland where 2 of our speakers are coming from. So just by being the network we are, that's what I wanted to start with. We are cross-cutting a lot of usual borders, limitations, times and space-wise, and reaching out in this session and in the conference for planetary awareness. I think we can do that here in a very good way, a planetary awareness which fits better to our responsibility in face of a confluence of crises which reach really deep and which are intertwined. So this is a great moment for the new Austrian chapter, and I really appreciate that you are all interested to be here, and we hope that we can provide fruitful thoughts, fruitful initiatives that already are taking place. And I'm very grateful that due to this, on our reaching out path for planetary awareness, that Martin Nesirky is here from the United Nations seat in Vienna. He's the director of the United Nations Information Services in the UN headquarters in Vienna. After having served as spokesperson for General Secretary of United Nations Ban Ki-moon between 2009 and 2014. So I'm very grateful that you have a vivid connection to the Austrian chapter of the United Nations, of the Humanistic Management Network again. I'm very happy that you're here, and thanks for your personal address to all participants now. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much indeed, Marcus, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening to people on this conference. And I have to say, this kind of opportunity is something that I really relish, because at the heart of it, anything that the United Nations wishes to do in the field of peace and security, sustainable development, human rights. Ultimately, it's about you, us, we the peoples, as the UN Charter says in its preamble. And as you know, United Nations is marking its 75th anniversary this year. Indeed, just last month on the 24th of October, but we're trying to use this anniversary not for a large cake with lots of candles, because yes, there are certainly many things to celebrate, but we only have to look around the world and closer to home to realize that this is definitely a job not yet done. We've completed a lot, we meaning everybody around the world. If you look at what has been achieved on hunger, poverty, health, education. But as the title of this particular session it already indicates, that this is far from business as usual. It's definitely business as unusual. And we only need to think of the very obvious of COVID-19, this pandemic, to understand that even with a fantastic action plan, a blueprint, the Sustainable Development Goals, the best plans can go awry. And I'll come back to that in a little bit. But in fact, that this pandemic is also, in this adversity, we do have an opportunity. And that's why this kind of gathering is really important, because it allows us collectively to tease out what is it that we think needs to be done better. How can we recover from this terrible pandemic in a stronger way, and deal with some of the already underlying problems that have been exacerbated by what's been happening and continues to happen. And that would have been it, as unusual, but as many of you will know, another unusual struck Vienna and has struck many parts of the world over many years. The serenity, the peace of Vienna as a city was shattered on Monday evening by a terrorist attack. At this point, it seems to have been a lone gunman, and 4 bystanders were died or were killed in that incident. And I think it made many people reflect on our need for tolerance and our need to overcome hatred, and to really focus, as this conference is doing, on overall theme of this conference, on the unity and strength we have in our diversity. And so that's another theme, a universal theme, very sadly. The terrorism is something that has afflicted many countries, and just on the same day as the incident here in Vienna, there was a multiple attack on the university in Kabul with multiple deaths, just to give one other example. And then another source of uncertainty in the geopolitics, of course, is the outcome of the presidential election in the United States. So these are some of the themes that mean that we really do need to think, how can we find a way to build on these different complexities in a positive way. And just very briefly, the UN Information Service here at the UN headquarters, that our role is to help to tell the story of the United Nations, of course, to the people of Austria, and to neighboring countries that we also cover. And we have a job also to help the organizations that are based here in Vienna to tell their story to the rest of the world. And so, for example, the International Atomic Energy Agency is based here. the UN Industrial Development Organization, and the UN Office on Drugs and Crime, the UN Office for Outer Space Affairs, just to give you a few examples. And they have really very, very different jobs to do. If you just listen to the titles, those are very different jobs, but the thread that really pulls us all together is indeed sustainable development and sustainable development goals. And so our job is to build that understanding, and not just that, because it's all very well for people to be aware, but our job is also to motivate people to take action, to help to move the dial. And just to give you one example of the kind of work that we do that can help with that, it's the 75th anniversary, as I mentioned, of the United Nations, and the Vienna transport system has the display screens in its trams and buses, or at least the modern ones, and on subway stations in the city. And we worked with the transport network operators to have visual displays really beautifully done with the help of all of my colleagues from those different organizations I mentioned. And this was a terrific way to help the people of Austria who travel in multiple numbers on the subway and on trams and buses, and indeed across Austria on other public transport. So this was a really concrete way for us, not just to show pretty pictures, but to tease people with information and quizzes, and also to steer them to work that they could do, actions that they could take. And another example is there is a very large shopping mall here in Vienna, and we arranged for an exhibition there. Originally, the idea would have been for there to be my colleagues there and for me to be there so that we could interact with the public, talk to them and hear their thoughts on what we need to do collectively to shape the future that we want. Of course, our plans had to change because of COVID-19. That personal interaction is not really what we can do at this point with many people. But many people saw the exhibition and could take away cards with for example, with QR codes that would enable them to see what actions they could take. So they're just a couple of examples. Now, I just wanted to come to what Marcus very kindly pointed out, that I was for some time the spokesperson for the Secretary General of the United Nations, Ban Ki-moon, for more than 4 years. And at that stage, we were in the run-up to the Sustainable Development Goals. They had not yet been agreed. There was a lot of negotiation going on about what needed to come after the Millennium Development Goals. They were 8 goals primarily aimed at the developing world. The classic topics that one would think of, poverty and hunger and so on, and health. But it was very clear that something well in excess of those core goals needed to be put in place to succeed the Millennium Development Goals. And on top of that, it was very clear that this needed to be a global and universal in theme.
Hi.
So, let me just give you a couple of very quick examples.
Yeah, sorry, Martin, but the participants are already pleased to mute. So this is a usual.
Yes, excuse me, can you please mute yourselves? Can you please mute yourselves?
Not you though, Martin, please.
Martin, what I'll do, I'll mute everyone and then unmute you again.
Okay.
That's okay. Yeah, I think.
Apologies for that.
No, not at all. In fact, in an in-person session, there would be noise in the room. I think it adds to the experience for this to feel that there are people on the other end. So that's not a problem. So listen. So just coming back to some of, I give you three very quick examples of my time with the Secretary General Barn, and how already then, I'm not suggesting it was something dreamt up simply by the Secretary General, although he had many important suggestions and inputs into what came out at the other end and really shepherded the process through to conclusion. But just as an indication, so I travelled obviously a great deal with the Secretary General, and in 2011 we visited Kiribati, which is a very small Pacific island nation that sits on virtually on the equator, virtually on the international date line. When I say small in population, it's many hundreds, indeed thousands of islands scattered across a vast territory of the Pacific Ocean, and they are definitely on the front lines when it comes to climate change. They're at great risk of disappearing under the sea as sea levels rise. So we visited there, and not only was it very clear that climate action would need to be a key component, but also more generally, life under the sea, life in the sea, life of those who are close to the sea, and that's actually the vast bulk of the world's population has some association to the sea. And then on top of that, there was a keen sense that this needed to be very people focused. And I remember the one young girl at a town hall meeting said to the Secretary General that I'm afraid to go. She was about my daughter's age, so she was about 9, I guess, 10. And she said, Secretary General, I'm scared to go to bed every night because I'm worried I'm going to be washed away by the sea. What are you going to do about it? And he said, I tell you what I'm going to do about it. And 2 weeks later, at the UN General Assembly in New York, as part of his speech, he referred to what this girl had said and made an appeal to world leaders to step up their work on climate. And this again was heading towards the Paris Agreement, which was still obviously another 4 years off. But you could see how this channeling of thought was really then coming together. And in 2013, we were in Mozambique, and the Secretary General, I was rereading this again just this morning. It was a very powerful visit to a rural school, and it was about women's empowerment and girls' empowerment. And this is much more centrally anchored now in the Sustainable Development Goals. And it was that kind of interaction with the schoolgirls and young women students that really helped the Secretary General, who has 2 daughters himself, and 2 granddaughters, to really push this along. And then coming back to business, because this is a theme for you, coming back to business in 2014, early in the year, we visited Cuba and Havana, and we took a walk through the old town, and I'd already done the homework, and I said to the Secretary General, if you see a barber shop, hairdressers, you need to go in and have a haircut. And so why did I do that? Because in Havana, small businesses of this kind were really beginning to take off. And this was a way for the Secretary General to show his support for that kind of entrepreneurship, and to show how small businesses are not a threat, but indeed a vital service. So that I'm not sure what his close protection team thought of scissors nearby, but I briefed them in advance. He went in and he had a haircut, and it made quite a splash, and was a good way to show that support for another key component of what has subsequently become the Sustainable Development Goals. The role of business, large and small, is absolutely indispensable, along with non-governmental organizations, civil society, such as the Humanistic Management Network. This is absolutely crucial. The United Nations on its own cannot get the job done, whether it's Sustainable Development Goals, whether it's climate action. So the UN Global Compact, which is the bit of the United Nations that brings together businesses, whether very small or huge conglomerates. This is a really important theme. And I know that there are networks of, as we speak of the Humanistic Management Network and the Austria chapter, for the Global Compact, the business network, if you like, of the United Nations. There are chapters, networks in many countries, including in Austria, and in other countries, I'm pretty sure, in India too. And so this is a really good area to try to develop, and the links between civil society and the business community, working in tandem to get that job done. And the job that we're talking about, the Sustainable Development Goals, we've just got a decade left to do this, and we're way off track. We were way off track before COVID struck, and now, of course, the pandemic has interrupted childhood immunization programs. At some point, up to 90% of children around the world were not in school. They may have been studying, but obviously many parts of the world, online learning is not an option. So this is a real blow for goal number 4, goal number 3 on health. And when we think about sanitation, water and sanitation, one of the key preventive measures is washing your hands. But 3 billion people worldwide don't have that kind of running water that would enable them to wash their hands as they're being asked to do. And then, of course, more broadly speaking, we're in the worst economic recession since the Great Depression. And so these are all major challenges, and poverty, hunger, all of these goals and the progress that's been made, the danger is that this will be reversed. So these goals are absolutely crucial. And I think Secretary General Guterres, who of course took over from Ban Ki-moon in 2017, he's absolutely single-minded about the role of the Sustainable Development Goals in helping us to recover in a better way. So those are some of the themes that I wanted to raise.
Brilliant.
Marcus.
Thanks a lot. Yes.
I hope that covers the ground for you.
Brilliant.
And if there are any thoughts that you have, please do let me know, Marcus.
Yes, I will definitely do. And thanks a lot for bringing the relevant topics down to very concrete points and connected to your personal experience. Brilliant. Do you see the video?
Yes.
What is prosperity for me?
Yes.
Für mich ist Wohlstand, wenn ich nach der hocken, wenn ich dreckige Hände habe, die Arbeitsschuhe ausziehen kann, mich hinsetzen kann, in aller Ruhe, in aller Sicherheit und dann einfach ein leibendes Mittagessen genießen kann.
For me, it's having more than enough of everything that you want and need.
barwaaqada waxa waa nimco Ilaahna siiyay waxa kamid ah nolosha gurigaaga waxa kamid ah caafimaadkaaga ay sidid waxa kamid ah bulshada ay sidid waxa kamid ah dadka aad dadkan tahay iyo nabadgelyada ayaa kamid barwaaqada Ilaah ku sii waa Ilaah maatis waaye Ilaah maatis iskale barwaaqada waa caafimaadka ay sidid iyo gurigaaga aad dadkan tahay iyo noloshaada iyo dadka aad ku dhaxajatid iyo nabadgelyada ay sidid ayaa u aqaana barwaaqo.
Prosperity is for me an abundance of something that you've gathered, or it's like some wealth that you've gathered, but wealth is not only the material wealth that you have, like money or something like that, it's more about gathering like an abundance of mental health where you can feel that you can live a long and stable life the way that you are.
لأنه أولادي يكونوا شاطرين بمدارسهم ومن الأوائل وأنا مرتاحة هون بعيشتي بالبيت والحمد لله كمان بعملي لأنه الناس اللي بشتغل معهم كتير متفاهميني وأنا فهمانتهم وكتير مرتاحة بعيشتي هون بالبلد الجديد لإلي وشكرا.
Wohlstand oder beziehungsweise glücklich sein, so nennen es wir, aber es ist im Endeffekt einen trockenen Schlafplatz haben, was nicht zieht, was du warm und sicher schlafen kannst, sondern trockenen und sicheren Schlafplatz. Ein bisschen was zum Essen, ein bisschen was zum Trinken, also ein bisschen ein Schlafzimmer da oder was, ein bisschen was zum Rauchen, Tabak oder ein bisschen ein Kraut kann auch sein. Freiheit, das ist Wohlstand. Scheiß auf Geld oder sonst was, weil glücklich muss man sein und sobald man das ist, dann hat man Wohlstand. Wurscht, wo man ist oder was man macht.
الازدهار يعني لما كل شخص في بلاد عنده فلوس بس يشتري أكل يشتري حاجة يشربها عنده فلوس بس يعيش وما فيش ناس فقراء وحتى ما فيش ناس أغنياء ما كل ناس زي بعضها كل ناس يقدروا يعيشوا وما فيش أي واحد فقير ما فيش أي واحد غني.
For me as a philosopher, I just can go along with Nietzsche and say time for myself is my prosperity, because one who hasn't got 2/3 of his day for himself is a slave.
Prosperity for me means healthy, wealthy, and wise. So there you go. So that's my take on prosperity.
Ich glaube, Wohlstand ist halt einfach genug Geld zu haben, um nicht darüber nachzudenken, was halt Wohlstand ist, oder? Also es ist halt einfach Bullshit, wenn sie uns sagen, Wohlstand ist irgendwie, wenn wir mental gesund sind und wenn wir einen guten Freundeskreis haben oder so. Weil versuch halt mal, wenn du 12 Stunden arbeitest und am Existenzminimum trotzdem lebst, einen guten Freundeskreis aufrechtzuerhalten oder mental gesund zu bleiben dabei.
In my opinion, prosperity is more than just a lot of money. I guess money is important too, but prosperity is happiness in all kinds of situations in your life. Prosperity is to be happy in your love life and in your career and your job, and to have a lot of friends and a family who loves and supports you, and to be healthy in your body and your mind.
For me, prosperity means being at peace with yourself and not being emotionally dependent on anyone, but taking responsibility for your own feelings.
Okay, Das waren jetzt zwei Beiträge, die Auseinandersetzung der Studenten in dieser Vorlesung Philosophy and Economics oder von der ausgehend sozusagen hier hereinbringen, und ich bin wirklich sehr dankbar für diese kreative Auseinandersetzung. Gerard, Mullally, wir bleiben im Setting Universität und wir haben einen Experten zu den hier. Gerard, very welcome. You're sitting. Good morning. You're sitting in Ireland now, in the moment.
That's correct. Yes.
Great that you share your expertise with us in implementing the SDGs in the management of a university and also in teaching in a holistic way. I'm very glad that you share this experience with us, and we stay, as I said, in the setting university, coming from the students, and you really did a lot. In one hand, implementing them in the management, and on the other hand also in the reflections of the university. So this is, I find, very special, and thanks for sharing us. It's your floor.
Thank you very much, Marcus. I'll try to share my screen.
Yeah.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, well, good morning, Marcus, and thank you very much for the invitation to participate this morning. And I think the story I'm going to tell will follow on very nicely, I think, from the student presentations that we've just seen, and I look forward to seeing the remaining presentations. So I've given the talk the title of Cultivating Change, the Goals of Sustainability and the Ecologies of Knowledge, Education and Learning in University College Cork. And you can see at the bottom of the screen the range of colleagues right across the different facets of the university who are involved in some of what I'm going to tell you today. So the theme of unity in diversity, and indeed business as unusual, the Sustainable Development Goals, fits the story in University College Cork very well, I think. And on the right-hand side of my screen, you can see the various different affiliations. I'm a sociologist in the Department of Sociology and Criminology in University College Cork, but I also have a range of affiliations in research centres, including the Marai Centre, who you presented some work from yesterday in collaboration with a colleague, Ian Hughes.
Yes.
Okay, so just to situate the university, it was founded in 1845 at the height of the Great Famine in Ireland. And it has an ancient heritage in the sense that it's located very close to the site of a monastery and a school of learning that was run by Saint Finbar, who was the patron saint of Cork. And indeed, the original motto of University Cork was where Finbar thought, let Munster learn. It's a comprehensive research-based university with 21,000 students, 3,000 staff, and 180,000 alumni. The vision of the university and the motto today is a tradition of independent thinking, and the core mission is creating understanding and sharing knowledge and applying it for the good of all. And a very strong emphasis in many of the strategic plans of the university, including the academic strategy, in terms of the outreach strategy with the community, and indeed our sustainability strategy, is the idea of a connected university. So I'm telling a story here. It's not a conceptual paper as such, but I do want to locate it, I suppose, in a body of scholarship and knowledge that focuses on things like knowledge ecologies, ecologies of learning, socio-ecological systems, and so on. And particularly the growing emphasis from ecology in education to an ecology of education. And I suppose what we're trying to address is the core challenge of how to cultivate ecologies of thinking, learning, and acting, where we don't know what these ecologies might become or what value we might arrive at. So the components of what I'm going to present include a short account of our learning journey, our sustainability strategy, the question of the university, not just as an institution of learning, but a learning institution. And to look at that in the context of the city of Cork and the process of using the Sustainable Development Goals to try to cultivate positive change. So very much in keeping with the presentations that we saw, the core of our sustainability journey and indeed our sustainability strategy is that it's student-led, it's research-informed and practice-focused. So what we're looking at is a process of institutional transformation that was originally inspired by students and enabled by the senior management in the university. And it's supported by a guiding framework such as the Green Flag and indeed ISO 50001. The emphasis is very much on connection, on collaboration, and the coordination of the efforts of the different functions and components of the university. And over the last number of years, this has gained a certain recognition in international metrics, including the UI Green Metric, the STARS program run out of North America, and the Times Higher Education Impact Ranking. Now, the point of these various different metrics and so on is that they actually facilitate processes of learning and change within the university itself. They provide us with key learnings about our own operations, our functioning, and indeed where the gaps are and where we need to improve. So just to give you a little bit of context, our approach is very much based on the Green Flag program, which was developed by the International Foundation for Environmental Education. It was primarily an eco-label for primary and secondary schools that were working to be more environmentally sustainable, and it's operating in 67 countries worldwide. UCC was the global pilot for the adaptation of this program to the university level, and it's now in operation in 14 countries. The key component of this, though, is partnership, the commitment and the engagement of all of the stakeholders. And it involves a 7-step program of continual improvement across the themes. So I mentioned the importance of the student dimension then of the program. And it really emerges in 2006 when a group of students who had experienced the Green Schools program brought to the attention of the university management that there was no continuity in the university with what had happened in their primary and their secondary schools, and they set about getting UCC involved in the Green Campus program. So it's a 7-step environmental management systems program involving the formation of a committee, very importantly carrying out an environmental review, developing an action plan, the monitoring and evaluation of progress, and it also highlights linking into the curriculum and informing and involving the wider community and developing a green charter. So on the top of the picture there, you can see some of the students and the staff in the university with the Green Flag, and the picture in the center there is of my colleague, Dr. Maria Karan, who was one of the students who actually initiated the program and has now become the Sustainable Development Officer for University College Cork. So if we just look at the management structure, first of all, we have the Green Campus Committee, and that's student focused. It's chaired by the Environmental Society and the Students' Union in the university. And it also comprises staff representation from key operational posts across the university. You then have the Sustainability Review Group, which brings together the what's now the interim president of University College Cork with the director of estates and other key, I suppose, functions of the university to continually review progress. And then there's the wider Green Forum that involves a much broader spectrum of both staff and students across the university. So the picture there of the Green Flag Reassessment Report is very important. That was the part of the process for the review and the granting of our 4th Green Flag was completely conducted by a university student, a second-year university student. So this, again, this focus on being student-led, research-informed and practice-focused is of key importance. So just to give you a little bit of a timeline here. So in 2006, our students voiced concern over waste practices on campus. Then that led to the formation of the Green Campus Committee and the establishment of a pilot program. And then formally in 2010, the first Green Flag was awarded to university. And that was followed in the following year by University College Cork acquiring 2nd place globally in the UI Green Metric. We were granted ISO 50001 certification around our energy management. Then in 2013-2014, the Green Forum was established, broadening out the participation across the university. And Cork University Hospital, our companion university, learning from the process within the university itself, also acquired its Green Flag. And we have an increasing share, or a growth in academic outputs around sustainability. 2016 is very important because we have the launch of the sustainability strategy for UCC, which is based around the Sustainable Development Goals. We had the launch of a sustainability module, which was piloted, which is open to staff, students, and the general public, and again is structured around the Sustainable Development Goals. And we launched a book on transdisciplinary perspectives on transitions to sustainability, which tries to capture the efforts of different researchers right across different disciplines within the university. Again, the commitment to sustainability was consolidated in 2017 with the recruitment of a sustainability officer. And we have then examples of campaigns like the Love Our Library campaign launch. And in 2018, we actually acquired STARS gold rating. And we had the first annual sustainability report reporting on across all of the functions of the university. And at the launch of the plastics-free UCC campaign, which again was directed by and inspired by demands coming from the student body. Now, the stories of these are told in a number of different book chapters, kind of plotting the journey in sustainable development in UCC and the process of learning from the STARS program and how that actually helps us to identify gaps in what we're doing and to make improvements therein. Apologies there. And just, again, just some other recent highlights in 2018, 2019. Again, we came 9th in the UI Green Metric in the international rankings, and we hosted the global UI Green Metric conference at UCC. We were awarded our 4th Green Flag. But we also begin to see the development of other initiatives like the Living Laboratory initiatives in UCC. And we achieved 1st place in the Times Higher Education Impact Ranking for SDG 12. So these are just some kind of key points along the journey. Looking into the sustainability strategy, it covers, I suppose it emerges from the Green Campus approach, but encompasses things like sustainability citizenship, teaching and learning, research, and then many of the other areas that you would expect to find in an environmental management system within a university addressing the Sustainable Development Goals. And just to give you a quick indication, I suppose, of some of the key foci of the strategy, there's an emphasis on facilitating the development and empowerment of future leaders in sustainability, I suppose, cultivating and encouraging our student body, our staff and the wider community in becoming active citizens for sustainability, and so on. But a key emphasis, just moving to the last point there, is to be an overall positive force in the journey towards creating a sustainable world for all. Now, key to this is the academic strategy 2018 to 2022, and the emphasis on developing a connected curriculum. And it's very much through this that we're attempting to integrate the SDGs right at the heart of our activities in the UCC, linking research-based teaching, the employability of graduates, sustainability at its core, a very strong emphasis on inter and transdisciplinarity, the importance of the global reach of the university, but also community engagement as well, working with and for our local community. And again, just drawing on the literature just for a moment here, the remainder of this part of the presentation just focuses on areas like core curriculum, which is the business as usual part of what we're doing. And then perhaps the business as unusual part would be in the hidden curriculum and the co-curriculum. Hidden curriculum is an important idea because it's not just about what we teach, but also about the values and beliefs that we transmit to the students, maybe unconsciously sometimes, and the impact on the wider institutional environment. In terms of the co-curriculum, then, this is the development of optional models outside of the usual program of study.
अरे नहीं वही तो
Okay, so in terms of the core curriculum then, sustainability issues are reflected throughout the university's undergraduate and postgraduate programs. Now, what we're seeing through these various different metrics and ranking systems is that the number and the quality of courses in which sustainability issues are featured are becoming increasingly an important performance indicator. But for us, what they're extremely useful for is in pointing out where and how we can make improvements. So currently in the region of 6% of all UCC modules relate directly to the Sustainable Development Goals. Some 60% of our academic departments offer at least one module related to sustainable development, and 16% of our students graduate having taken at least one of these modules. So what this showed us was that there's considerable room for improvement and development in the curriculum in terms of integrating the Sustainable Development Goals. And a recent initiative started this year around sustainability leadership is, as part of the Government of Ireland Human Capital Initiative, we've launched a postgraduate diploma in sustainability and enterprise on meeting the challenges of the future. What we're also doing through the National Forum for Teaching and Learning, we have a new program developing a connected curriculum, integrating the SDGs within our curriculum. So that combines a number of different facets, including desk-based research and global practice, focus group sessions with both students and staff to try to produce desired learning outcomes, and then open sessions within the university to highlight best practice internationally and promote learning across disciplines, the development of an online toolkit to support staff in integrating some or all of the SDGs into their teaching, a focus on the role of the SDGs in universities, and again, looking to, I suppose, direct learning outcomes towards the Sustainable Development Goals. So this is one of the areas where we're attempting to improve. In terms of the hidden or informal curriculum, we're looking at a variety of behaviour and practice-based change programs, including the Love Our Library campaign. The library in the university is the beating heart, if you like, of the university. Most students and staff will at some point spend time there. So literally the windows of the library have become the windows on the SDGs, where messaging around various different waste reduction programs and energy management programs are communicated to the staff and the students. Now, what's important here, and I'm highlighting the fact that UCC secured a Green Award in 2019 as Green Public Sector Organisation of the Year. Why is this important? It's important because other large public sector institutions in Cork are beginning to adopt and learn from UCC. But it also gives the students a sense of accomplishment and being part of something much broader. We also have things like procurement policies, environmental management systems, and marketing programs. One of the big ones at the moment is ditching the disposables at UCC, which again was inspired by demand from the students, where our catering providers put in place in 2018 a single-use plastic-free cafe and a variety of other waste reduction measures that the students are participating in. So again, that inclusion of the students is critically important. Supplementing this and trying to, I suppose, cross over from the research being done in the university and various different programs, we have the UCC Green Campus Living Laboratory program. And really what this is seed funding for various different programs, including research, MSc research projects where the students are doing their research on specific policies and programs that are to be implemented in the university, but also different demonstration programs like deposit and return schemes on takeaway lunchboxes, the Open Arboretum program, the International Office Swap Shop, and so on. In terms of the co-curriculum, we launched the university-wide module on sustainability in January 2016, and that's very much centered on the Sustainable Development Goals. And what that does is it brings researchers from right across the university in many different disciplines together, and that provides students, staff, and the general public with access to I suppose the most up-to-date knowledge on the Sustainable Development Goals, particularly in the Irish context. The informal name of the module is putting sustainability in its place, putting yourself in the picture. So really about the localization of the global goals. And that's supported again by collaborations in research that have been established in the ecosystem in UCC. That's also been linked to innovation and creativity hubs in Ludgate and Skibbereen in West Cork and in Dingle in Kerry, which is in the southwest of Ireland. So we've connected remotely with these hubs so that we can connect with initiatives in the wider community. And that's been supplemented recently in 2019 with another university-wide module on global sustainable development, interdisciplinary goals, looking at things like global justice, climate change, and so on. So in terms of the learning ecosystem then, in terms of the bottom-up dimension, we have the Green Campus Committee, the student clubs and societies, and programs like the Student Switch Off program in energy, plastic-free movement among the students, and the Food Waste Project. Top down, we have the Sustainability Strategy, the Green Forum, a Biodiversity Action Plan, and so on. That then is, I suppose, complemented by the learning processes that take place at the middle out level. So the green teams within the library, within various different schools, things like the university-wide module and so on. And then the learning that we get from our participation in things like the Green Flag program, Green Metric, the STARS program, but nationally then things like the National Strategy for Education and Sustainable Development, Public Sector Energy Efficiency Plans, and the Campus Engage Charter. So this is continually evolving and adapting, and coordination across the university helps to create impact. It helps to try to overcome the siloization that can often take place in universities. Now, in our wider environment in 2015, Cork was awarded UNESCO the Learning City Award. And that's resulted in initiatives like the Learning Neighbourhood programme, where the university moves out into various different communities and works with communities around various different initiatives. In Cork 2017, we had the Global Goals, Local Actions International Conference towards lifelong learning for all in 2030. And the Cork Declaration on the SDGs comes out of that process. And key to this is partnership involving the City Council, the Education and Training Board, the Institute of Technology, UCC itself, but also groups like the Chamber of Commerce and so on. And partnership, I suppose, is key to the SDGs and their advancement in Cork. Internationally then, partnerships with the National University in Colombia, with UMass Lowell in the US, have led to, I suppose, internationalization and global partnerships around the Sustainable Development Goals. So in 2019, that resulted in a PhD conference where some of our local partners and our international partners came together, focused on global goals, local actions, making sustainability work. And that connection with Colombia has been very important because of our history. The EU representative to the peace process in Colombia is an Irish politician. There have been reciprocal visits to Colombia, very much focused on the Sustainable Development Goals. It's provided a language and, I suppose, a process by which we can enhance our collaborations. So I'm come back to this word of cultivating change. The strategic integration of the SDGs helps to consolidate the values, the mission, the identity, and so on of the institution across all of its functions, whether that's teaching and learning, research, outreach, whether it's the operations side, and increasingly, of course, internationalization and sustainability have become core missions of the university. They provide us with the basis for local and global partnerships. And while the recognition through these external programs is very nice, its real function is to provide us with a mechanism for continuous learning to inform key strategies and plans. And they also help to sustain the ongoing institutional commitment to the SDGs and to sustainable development. So it's not just institutions of learning, but we are a learning institution as well. Now, I just want to finish with a visual metaphor. This is a wildflower meadow in the lower grounds of University College Cork. Of course, this is naturally occurring. It had to be seeded. The decision had to be made to do this. But it's become a kind of a metaphor for the university in the city working around the Sustainable Development Goals. The wildflower meadow has drawn huge attention locally to the university, and it's brought people from the local community into the university to enjoy the biodiversity that has come from the wildflower meadow, which again is part of our pollinator plan and so on. So the idea then of cultivating change, of cultivating sustainability through the goals, isn't a story of success. It's a story of ongoing learning and striving to do better, which again was one of, I suppose, the messages of one of the presentations yesterday by Marcus and by our colleague Ian. Thank you very much for your attention.
Brilliant. Thank you, Gerard, for this really great example to take the SDGs serious in the dimensions of a university as an organization, as well as framing the university as a learning organization. I really appreciate your contribution. It's a brilliant thing to have you here. Thanks a lot, Gerard, and I hope you will stay on. I just lost you here on the screen, but I hope you will stay on and be available for questions after 10:15.
I will, yeah.
Yes, okay, super, brilliant. And I hope everyone that you can wait a little bit with your questions. I'm sure there were many initiatives and incentives for questions there. But I would like to welcome Edmund Byrne now, who has to leave in 10:15. So I would like to give him very quickly the floor. Ed Byrne is a chair professor and head of department in the Department of Process and Chemical Engineering, also in University College Cork. We saw his name already in the team working with the SDGs in UCC. And he will provide a very good and profound reflection on the SDGs and their societal impact. Ed, are you there?
I am indeed. Thank you, Marcus.
Brilliant. Ed, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Marcus, for that, and it's been a real pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me, because it's a wonderful occasion at the founding of the Humanistic Management Network for Austria. So it's a terrific occasion, and thank you for your session this morning, particularly the videos. I think, as well as Martin's introduction, have really you know, brought the thing together. So hopefully myself and indeed Gerard, my colleague from University College Cork, can step up to the plate adequately. So thanks, Marcus. So I hope to try and share the screen now.
You can, you are co-host, so you should be able to.
Okay, thank you, Ernest. Now, can you see a slide there now? Is that
yes, everything is there.
Great. Okay. Okay. So just to sort of follow on from Gerard, I know Gerard had a very good description of some of the work that's done in University College Cork, but of course Gerard is as a dear colleague of mine and somebody I've worked with over the last decade and so on. He's also a pretty humble guy. He's been talking about a number of programs and institutions that the university have been initiating, and indeed community outreach. Gerard is involved in not just involved in many of those, but he's actually leading a number of those as well as on the research front in terms of Reimagining 2050 as an EPA funded research program that he's leading. And he's as an environmental sociologist himself, and he reaches out across the teaching domain as well. And he himself and myself, we get our engineers and environmental sociologists and governance students to come together as well. So I think he's sort of Professor Sustainability across University College Cork, if such a term could be applied to anybody. Gerard certainly is that person. So I suppose I'm just going to reflect on some of the research that myself and Gerard and other colleagues across UCC have been doing. Feeding into the Sustainable Development Goals. So that's, I suppose, the key focus this morning. And also, I suppose, the nice catchy title, or slightly provocative title, Business is Unusual. So we're talking really about, in that case, that's pointing towards transformational change, the need for transformational change. We're on a certain trajectory that really isn't a trajectory that's going to bring us to anywhere terrific. We're on, in many instances, we're on a negative trajectory, and we need to change that. And I suppose then we're going to feed back into the broader context of the theme of the conference this week, unity and diversity, and reflect on some of the meanings around that and how they can help progress the I suppose the UN Sustainable Development Goals in a positive manner. So as Marcus suggests, I'm Professor of Process and Chemical Engineering. I'm also involved in the Environmental Research Institute, along with Gerard and others across our university in University College Cork in the southwest of Ireland. So I suppose, as Martin earlier on pointed out, the Sustainable Development Goals run from 2015 to 2030, sort of a global number of goals that I think most of us are fairly well familiar with at this stage, because one really key advantage of them is that they really have huge institutional and international buy-in, and they relate to a number of different, I suppose, progressive aspirations that we have as a global community, environmental, social, equality, and a number of things that really are what we should be looking towards, that we've agreed as a global community. They followed on from the UN Millennium Development Goals, as Martin mentioned before, which were, I suppose, in many respects a good start around the millennium and so on. But they often were framed from a sort of the North helping the South in an almost in a well-meaning way, but sometimes in a way that actually didn't work as well as one could if you have a more global input, which the SDGs did have. So I suppose there are some critiques of the SDGs, and I suppose as academics it's important that we look at things from a critical perspective. But a number of people have suggested that they're all vague and utopian, and you know, it's they are, you know, motherhood and apple pie to many. It's hard to disagree with many of them, but really where's the beef, as they suggest, because there are perhaps few concrete goals, even unlike their predecessors, which had a number of quantitative goals and so on. The Economist at the time, when they came out around 2015, suggested that they, you know, from them there were 169 targets and so on, but they suggested they were worse than useless commandments. And I suppose a drawback of them is that they can be all things to all people. Everybody buys into them, and many governments and institutions, multinationals and others, all can buy into them. But then they can be different things to different people, and really don't always potentially mean transformational change, that we can have basically business as usual or business almost as usual, so they don't actually in themselves provoke fundamental change. And then if we look at them, I suppose, in some detail, we things like, you know, decent work, as was mentioned by Martin as well, and innovation, which is really important. But you know, economic growth and infrastructure and industry and so on in themselves don't necessarily imply the necessary change that's required, particularly if we're looking at responsible consumption and production, which is another goal. And sometimes then you might say, well, they seem to be, you know, pulling in opposite directions at times. You know, we're on a treadmill of consumerist consumption and production across the world, which is really feeding into an unsustainable societal construct. And in that context, you know, we have the metrics for water, for land, for soil, degeneration and so on are all in many respects going in a negative pathway. And of course also climate, carbon emissions continue to climb, and we're going in the wrong direction there. So, you know, there are some problematic issues around that. And that's before you look at the social SDGs about poverty, about education, health and well-being, gender inequality, and generally in reduced inequalities and so on. So, you know, there's a lot there. There's a lot on the plate there. And then I suppose there are 17 of them, but 15 of them relate to these different things, and I've just shown some of them there. But I suppose a key aspect of that and drawing them together is that we have strong institutions, and that's strong institutions for positive change. And of course the UN, I suppose, comes to mind as one of them, that perhaps, even though it's 75 years of age this year or upcoming, you know, it sometimes feels that it has had better days or has greater potential or could have greater potential, and it's been beaten around by various different forces and so on, and could be perhaps stronger in terms of promoting these, as indeed other institutions we look at, you know, whether it be European Union or various different you know, institutions, that their initial focus and so on sometimes seems a little bit lost, and they're open to critique by people. But really, if we want to have these sort of strong institutions for progressive change, we need to recognize that we're partners, you know. So in the context of a more connected global environment, we need to see that we're actually working in partnership with each other. And also we need to see the connections between each of these sustainable development goals, that they are actually fundamentally interconnected with each other. And I suppose that's really where I want to kind of look at from here. And if we look at the SDGs, then, you know, on the flip side, one thing that they do have is they have that international institutional buy-in. So we can just take them and say, yeah, they're accepted. So that's a really strong thing. Another thing, unlike the Millennium Goals, is that they were developed with global participation, the global North and South working together, East and West working together. So therefore they have a certain credibility associated with them that the Millennium Goals didn't have necessarily. And then hence they can provide a template for hope. So they can be leveraged to elicit that potential transformational change that's required. So there's hope there when we use them. So we can use them for good, to leverage for good. So I'm just going to reflect on just in terms of our own institution. MARI is a national research energy, climate, marine research institution based in University College Cork, and within that there's a research grouping that was led by a colleague of mine, Ian Hughes, who was supposed to be here this morning. So I'm filling in from him. I work with him on in this project, as does Marcus in the Humanistic Management Network from Austria, as well as some other institutions as well. And we've had a number of there've been a number of meetings and fora, including one earlier this year with former President Mary McAleese, President of Ireland, looking at a deep institutional change for sustainability and human development. So, as I mentioned, some of the various different institutional inputs to this project: MARI in UCC and across Ireland, Humanistic Management Network from Austria, and also the Paris-based OECD, the NIC unit, which is a very valuable unit within the OECD, and one of their publications there is Beyond Growth towards a New Economic Approach. So again, they're looking at transformational change from the economics perspective, and some really good stuff coming from that particular unit there. So I suppose the basis of that, the research is we're looking at a confluence of societal crises and recognizing that they're deeply interconnected. So you have climate change, environmental degradation and biodiversity collapse, technological disruption, democratic malaise, and international political crisis. And I think we can agree that these things are more to the forefront, and inequality and growing social unrest. And I suppose the COVID-19 pandemic has sort of exposed and exacerbated a number of these issues. And so on that basis, looking at perhaps I suppose it's a broad project, a big ambitious project in a sense, but looking at reimagining through deep transformational institutional change across a number of various different realms. Democracy and politics, perhaps a too minimalistic view has been taken. It's been suggested, that it's just about voting every 4 years, but there's more to democracy than that. We have some colleagues from our government department involved in this, and things like citizens fora and so on could perhaps be used to a greater extent to strengthen democracy. Economics, the neoclassical economic model is perhaps not fit for purpose in terms of getting us where we need to get. And as I say, the OECD, NAAC, NEG unit have been suggesting some different means to progress in that respect. Religion, there are several billion religious adherents across the globe, so these are institutions for potential change for good. And gender, and our former president was looking at religion and gender, and the importance of recognizing all genders and both genders in terms of religious institutions more fully, and education, particularly higher education, and the role that universities and higher education can play in this change. Should we be considered sort of business units, or something as modes for particular change, whereby we actually are at the forefront of change as thought leaders. So Ian Hughes, the PI on the project, suggests at this dangerous historical moment, social institutions must be reimagined to contain toxicity and empower progressive change. So I suppose looking at that and looking at the SDGs, I suppose we're looking at, it's important to recognize then that for transformational change, these are based on particular values and norms. That it's not just about the reduction of CO2, for example, in climate change. There's more to it than that. We need to actually reorient or explicitly orient values and norms in a particular way in order to get to where we might want to be. So we need, for deep transformational institutional change, we need these strong institutions like the UN and others that can actually help as vehicles to get there. But we really do need to work in partnership as well. And also we need integrative approaches where we embrace this interconnection and recognize the interconnection across not just across the SDGs, but also across different levels. So we have the environmental, the social, the economic, and so on, and see that they're all inherently interconnected and deeply interconnected. So integrative approaches are entirely appropriate here. And I suppose this, in terms of our current and previous work, Gerard mentioned a book that we published a couple of years ago with a colleague, edited volume with a number of colleagues, in fact, 12 academics from across the disciplines. So this is Transdisciplinary Perspectives on Transition Sustainability, including Colin Sage, who's a geographer, and a food geographer, in fact. And this work, I suppose, is based on talking about sustainability narratives from across the disciplines. So it's transdisciplinarity explicitly, looking at transformation and taking integrative approaches. So it includes both qualitative and quantitative approaches to looking at some of these issues. And we have another book with Gerard and Colin and led also by Ian, again with a number of academics from across the disciplines coming out next year on metaphor for sustainability transformations. So looking at, I suppose, the Humanistic Management Manifesto, which I had a look at in the last while, I think it really reflects this integrative approach whereby we want to complement both the quantitative metrics that have so often been used, perhaps exclusively or too much on one side, and these are important, but also the qualitative evaluation criteria that reflect on human dignity and well-being of every woman and every man as well. So these together, so it's the diversity of these sort of what we might look at as agonistic duality tendencies, that they're actually complementary opposites in the sense that they need to be brought together, so that we see that there's value in the diversity as opposed to being some sort of incompatible opposites or an antagonistic duality or a Cartesian duality in a sense. So this concept of unity and diversity is extremely powerful, and has been something that's been with us, that there's a wisdom in that has been with us across society, across history, and across the disciplines, for a long time, and in various different disciplines as well, including obviously the theme of the conference of humanistic management, and I suppose the ethos of the humanistic management movement or manifesto. So unity and diversity, another way of putting that, I suppose, is out of many come one. We have this diversity, we can get emergent, transformative change if we work together and recognize that the diversity can actually be, can create new ways of looking at things. I suppose out of many one, if we, there's different ways of putting that in different cultures and so on. In Gaelic language, in Irish, it's Ní Neart Chur le Chéile is the saying, that, that we can get very far, we can get nowhere without working together. Or if we go back to the old Latin, which I remember I once studied in school, et pluribus unum is one way of putting out of many one. And of course, this was since the 1770s was the unofficial motto of the United States of America, and I suppose from that, that thinking up to the 1950s when "In God We Trust" I think became the official motto. But over the last 200 years, that has helped that country to become the number one most powerful nation on the world stage in many respects by adhering to that motto, out of many one. And it's shown on its coins, on its seal of the president, and so on. And I think that it behoves. I suppose we can agree that it behoves that particular country to look at that motto and along with other countries to work together to progress in a positive way. So it's something that's actually has a very powerful resonance. There's a political wisdom there that not just the US but other countries look at as well. And going back into the US, there's also an indigenous wisdom there. Indigenous communities have often taken this integrative approach. John Ehrenfeld is an MIT professor who's written a lot on sustainability, and Professor Emeritus, in fact. And he suggested if you become conscious of the connections of everything, not just the immediate world before you, you'll experience a much broader, more powerful sense of being. And some Native Americans talk of being part of the web of life, where they connect everything to everything, and so develop a respect for everything as sacred. So this, when we look at this deep interconnectedness between, you know, ourselves, the world around us, our environment, then things, we can look at the world in a different way as being, you know, as it's suggested there, sacred, which I suppose is gives connotations of it's taboo to actually violate something that's sacred. So the idea of economic externalities don't come into play here, that one, simply if something is sacred, there's no value on it, it's beyond value, it transcends value, and so on. And this concept can be useful, I suppose, as well, in terms of that indigenous wisdom. So, for example, if we look over in the Lebanon, the flag of the Lebanon, the emblem is the cedar tree. But unfortunately, you know, due to ecological destruction over many centuries and millennia, indeed, there are very few cedar trees left in the Lebanon. But there are some small amounts. There's one, Bishari Grove, which is also called the Cedars of God, which has been extant for over 2 millennia. And the reason it remains there was because it was considered a sacred space, a sacred spot. And you know, so the economic imperatives to develop and cut down the trees was not there, because if something is sacred, it's taboo to actually desecrate it. So I suppose that sort of concept can be useful in terms of the way, if we were to use it to look at our world around us, to look at our connections with each other, and connections with animate and inanimate life, or inanimate things, for example. So, you know, this can be perhaps a useful construct in terms of sustainability narratives. And going back to I suppose we're talking, you know, we've had political wisdom, indigenous wisdom of this idea of connection and interconnection, and then scientific wisdom, ecological wisdom. Rachel Carson was I suppose, in many respects, the founder of the contemporary or modern environmental movement with her book Silent Spring, where she suggested that the history of life on Earth has been a history of interactions between living things and their surrounds. So we see from the science that an ecology, that interconnection is really important. Religious wisdom as well. You know, in the last number of years, Pope Francis, one of his encyclicals, Laudato Si, based on the work and teaching of Saint Francis, suggests that, you know, we urgently need a humanism capable of bringing together the different fields of knowledge, including economics in the service of more integral and integrating vision, and what's needed is a politics which is far-sighted and capable of a new integral and interdisciplinary approach to the handling of different aspects of the crisis. And he talks there, I suppose, of an environmental and ecological crisis, but even more recently, in the last month, he's produced another encyclical based on his work with the Islamic world and so on, and he speaks a lot about walls and the need to break down walls and work with each other, which I think is particularly resonant at the current time. And again, we think of this week's events. So integrative approaches, I suppose, from various different and religious perspectives and different religious traditions, and many of them come to the same perspective. There's also ancient wisdom, both in the East and in the West. If we look at the West, we have Heraclitus, you know, Greek philosophers and so on, who suggested that, you know, the harmonious structure of the world depends on the opposite tension, like that of the bow and the lyre. So this, again, this idea of complementary opposites, of agonistic duality as opposed to antagonistic Cartesian duality and separation. So that you need actually these opposites to work in terms of, let's say, for example, the bow or indeed the lyre to make that music or to fire that arrow. So there's a certain wisdom there in Western philosophy, and that's also repeated in Eastern philosophy in the concept of Taoism, Taoist conception of yin and yang, complementary duality there. And I suppose, you know, from a scientific perspective, even we look at 20th century physics, and Niels Bohr won the Nobel Prize in 1922, looking at quantum physics, which is really, you know, from a Newtonian and a Cartesian perspective, it's just crazy stuff, but it's reality, it's accepted physics. And he won the recipient of the Order of the Elephant in Denmark, his nation's highest ranking honor in 1947. So for that, he he had to actually create a coat of arms. And the coat of arms he created incorporated the yin and yang as opposites, but interdependent opposites, complementary opposites. One cannot exist without the other. So he is contraria sunt complementa, using the Latin again. So he could see the value of this. And of course, you know, he devised the principle of complementarity in quantum physics, the idea that the wave and a particle and a position and its momentum each are inherent functions of an observer. So the old view of science as being, you know, you can have the standoff researcher, you know, not being part of the scientific experiment, standing away from and looking down on, apart from. It doesn't actually work in quantum physics. You know, the observer is required to decide on the position of the wave or the particle. And even this idea of wave and particle being one is again something that's that shows the interconnection between the two. Again, Francis is getting back to, he speaks of Guardini, who is an inspiration behind that encyclical Laudato Si, and suggests that he was the master of oppositions, of bipolar tensions, who teaches us this path of unity and diversity, the theme of the conference that we're at this week. So what's happening today with fundamentalists? Fundamentalists lock themselves up in their own identity and don't want to hear anything else. So we can have a sort of a synthesis, which is you know, something that basically we have a uniform, let's say sometimes it's been called McDonaldization, globalization, which serves nobody well, because synthesis, as Guardini suggests, can destroy everything. We must tend towards a polyhedron, towards a unity that preserves all diversities and all identities. So we have all this rich diversity, and from that then we can develop and can emerge you know, new perspectives, new ways of working in a richer, better environment. So I was speaking to Gerard earlier this week, and we're wondering about, well, I'm an engineer and he's a sociologist, environmental sociologist, and really what are we doing at a management conference, really? And in putting this together, I just thought and looked back, I suppose, on management. I suppose, well, I found something that I can talk to in management, and you know, one of our chapters in our books is about paradigmatic transformations across the discipline, where we look at this idea of duality, complementary duality in chemical thermodynamics, in electricity generation and distribution, even in process theology, and also in leadership and management. And you know, just a quote from that chapter: there's a recognition in the area of leadership and management of the need to strive to obtain a contingent and appropriate balance between respective agonistic tendencies of organizational control in one respect and autonomy in the other, as a means of driving organizational success and sustainability. And I just want to cite Linda Hill from Harvard Business School, where she resolves the opposing tendencies of what she calls unleash or inquateness and harness or order into 6 constituent paradoxes which are acquired in management. So she suggests leading or individual versus collective identity, support versus confrontation, learning and development versus performance, improvisation versus structure, patience versus urgency, and bottom-up versus top-down. So a pragmatic, context-dependent management leadership style is therefore required amid an ongoing process of continuous recalibration. So we need both, but we need both working together. So I suppose this feeds into narratives around sustainability, and a Danish architect who won a Best Paper Award at a conference in Cambridge that was at a few years ago, suggested that we should use a navigational metaphor around sustainability discourses that helps us, you know, steer us in the challenges and navigate around the rocky patches of undesirable solutions. So this idea, this resilience, this contingent things being thrown at us, whether it be pandemics or whatever, that you know, if we have that resilience, we can get through the storms that are thrown at us. I think that's a useful metaphor and indeed device for sustainability narratives. So I suppose looking at those sustainable development goals, just to tie things together, I suppose they are, aspirational. They're out there. They're maybe a little bit nebulous in a sense, But really, if we want to actually get there, and perhaps, you know, the best way to get there is to leverage ideas around unity and diversity. In this diverse pathway, we can find a path towards applying or getting to the Sustainable Development Goals by this approach, and find a path through the next years, decades, and so on, certainly over up to 2030 and beyond, by application of this idea and some of the ideas around unity and diversity. So I'll leave it at that with that thought, and I'll hand back to Marcus, if that's okay.
Brilliant, Ed. Thanks a lot. You did bring, just because you asked, you did bring a lot into this management conference and community here. It was great to have you here. Okay. I must excuse, you have to go, and it's 10:15.
Yes, I have some lectures to give, so yes. So I'm just going to try and
you did it just and perfect in time. Great, thanks a lot. This brings up the question of the last 15 minutes here. I would really love to show the videos, and we have a hand up from Obi for a question and answer session. So my proposal would be that I show the videos. They really take up some aspects, the intertwinedness, the bound together character of the problems we deal with, and that we afterwards, before the break, take up the questions. And I would really appreciate if you have questions that cannot be raised in these few minutes, that just write them down or send an email to the Austrian chapter. We really, I think, as Ed described, we are well connected and we can organize something afterwards. Is that okay? I hope that I have the possibility to show the short videos. It was hard work. It was very, very good work, and I'd really love to show them. And I hope it works. So it has a tone, and I should see the video. Geez, I don't. Well, then, Ernst, just a question. Could we share the videos in a different way, like to all participants?
I don't know, Marcus. I
Okay.
don't know. We had, if you have a YouTube link, I guess we could post it to the participants, but that's going to take late. I mean, before it worked fine. If you would do what you did before, we should be good.
Yes, but I don't see the video in my when I share the screen. I don't see it as a link. You know?
No, I don't know. But you managed half an hour ago or an hour ago.
Yes, I did. But
you can't do the same again.
Yeah, but I don't see the video. That's my problem.
Okay, I mean, we can post a link in the chat box, and then, you know, many people will probably go and check it out.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, my students.
Or if you send me why don't you put the link in the chat box, please, and then I can play it and screen share whilst we're playing it. Maybe that would work.
I'm afraid the video is not uploaded, right?
Can you put the link in the chat box?
No, I don't have a link. I should load it up first. So I won't do that.
No.
I would like to give the chance to discuss and to pose questions, like, for example, Obi, and we will search a solution for the videos, I'm sure. We have a website as Austrian chapter where we can provide them for everyone, and we invite everybody to visit the website. So there will be a solution. Obi, would you come in with your question, please? I see that you have the hand up. Yeah. Okay. Yes.
I think the hand went down.
Okay. Okay. Is there anybody who has mentally a hand up to raise a question? Gerard Mullally, he's still there. And we really, it was a great connection both presentations had together, working in a team and fostering from two sides a very good and experienced view on the SDGs. So it was two great presentations we had here. Is anybody decided now to come in, to hop in with a question or a remark?
Aura has her hand up.
Aura, very good. South Africa, the floor is yours.
Hi, thank you
Hi.
very much, Marcus. And yes, the presentation was indeed very lovely. I had a question for Oren. I think I'm saying the name correctly. I don't know if he's still here.
Yes, he is here.
The question has to do with, did they face any sorts of challenges? Because I saw in the timeline that the whole initiative began with students raising their concerns regarding how waste were being disposed in university. So I just wanted to know from that point onward, because obviously from that point, at some point it became more than just student concerns, right? They then created initiatives, they then started implementing it. And I just wanted to know a little bit more about perhaps how they went about moving from just being a student concern to integrating it in the system, creating the initiative. And then secondly, if they faced any challenges, any, maybe people refusing to abide with the idea or anything like that, just to continue to stimulate my mind. Thank you.
Thanks very much. I should clarify, I suppose, that we're under lockdown at the moment, and I'm broadcasting from home. Oren is actually my son. I'm on his Zoom account. So, but yeah, I mean, one of the things that I think was very apparent, and it has become even more pronounced with the SDGs, is that an institution cannot simply impose this from the top down. So even when the senior management responded to the students' demands from very early on, there were a lot of kind of town halls. There were a lot of meetings and opportunities for input and buy-in. And these, of course, I presented an evolutionary story, but this has been fraught with many different debates, discussions, different perspectives, and so on. So in some senses, it was relatively slow to begin with, as you begin to reach out to other disciplines, reach out across the various different functions of the university. Like any large institution, siloization, I suppose, is one of the characteristic features of large institutions, where I could be in a building next to somebody from a different discipline who's done similar research and know nothing about it. So in a sense, the community building aspect of it internally within the university has been core to its development, but also to sustaining it over time. And this comes through very strongly from the lovely student presentations that have been made, but also that graphic of the Sustainable Development Goals, the people, prosperity, planet, and partnership, and so on. The people dimension of this is very, very important. That you, with a handful of committed individuals, and then with the institutional structures that facilitate the cultivation of an environment that allows for these kind of collaborations, is absolutely vital. And again, we've been very lucky, not just in the student leadership that we've had, but also in the senior management, because of the commitment that they have to sustainability. And indeed on the operations side with our buildings and estates director, that these are already people that are very strongly motivated by sustainability, and providing those fora, those contexts and those opportunities for exchange and collaboration has been absolutely vital. It simply wouldn't have happened without it. No, there would be many different pockets of innovation, but there would be islands that maybe wouldn't be able to connect otherwise.
Thank you very much. That was very...
Thanks, Laura.
Thank you, Gerard, for this great aspect that you provided additionally. Somebody else wants to join? We still have some time, a little bit. Charlotte, Dr. Glasser? No?
No.
No? Okay. I just, sometimes the color is going through.
No, I'm sorry. I was just fixing.
Yeah, no problem. No. Didn't want to impose.
It was very, these sessions are very interesting, but they're very complex. And,
okay.
And I think we need to, in general, a general comment, if I may make that on reflection,
okay.
is that we need to get more robust research designs. And I think we need to get an anthropology, a theoretical foundation of anthropology that we can join around to line the discussions on the micro, meso, and aggregated institutional level. And I really see that as the major challenge for the Agenda 2030, the United Sustainability Agenda. So it was also a report last year, as you know, from a scientific group that independently reviewed the progress of the goals. And they said we should go down to fewer goals, but still they did not address the dependencies, the independencies, and non-relevance. And I think that's where we are. I spent considerable time on this, and we must, in a reasonable way, detail in any effort, how does human being relate to created environment, a natural environment, and human organizations and externalized artifacts. And it's quite a challenge, but we need to get through that and to start our arguments, effort or relaying any effort to this type of theoretical modeling. I'm a bit on the way, as I said before coming.
Yes.
I think it also opens up for aligning efforts of different kinds in the same direction. In the UK, for example, it's a big emphasis on well-being.
Okay.
So we discussed yesterday. So how does this all fit together? If I can finish, I would say also that you had this Anthropocene construct, and that is very problematic to me, because the only way we can understand the world and the created world and discuss it and research it is from the human situation. So I think we should acknowledge that with its plus and minuses. That would be my key message.
Thanks a lot for your comment. Gerard, would you like to refer to that?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose I presented one facet of what we're doing, which was more on the green campus side of things. I mean, the day job is I'm a sociologist in a department with in a larger school with anthropologists there as well. So one of the projects that I lead, Imagining 2050, are using kind of both visual and I suppose some of the techniques borrowed from deliberative democracy to research with local communities their construct of their interaction with the environment, with social sustainability, and not just with the 2030 agenda, but with the 2050 horizon of climate change and the Paris agreements. So, quite a lot of our research work is focused precisely on that. What I was addressing today was I suppose the institutional story and how that's been taken up. But there's quite a lot of research that can be found on either the MARI website or the ERI website of the kind of work that we do in that direction.
Thanks a lot. just I saw, and I hope that you recognize that too, that in the chat, Mario Reicher, one of the students, uploaded another video that had not been shown. So you can straight away click on that. Mario Reicher, thanks for that. Great move. But I will promise, I'm promising now that we will have all 5 videos uploaded and available. Yes. I didn't understand that. Maybe it was not referred to us. Could you unmute?
Okay, I have muted everyone now, Marcus, so you have to please unmute yourself again. I'm sorry, but sometimes I just press the mute.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks a lot. I mean, unfortunately, I only have left the time to say a hearty thanks to everyone, especially the contributors today. We really had a great insight into your relevant work with the SDGs and towards goals that are characteristic for the Humanistic Management Network too, I think, as a new member. Insofar, I'm really very grateful for your presentations here, for the incentives you brought into the network, and the Austrian chapter being formed now with this first event. And I'm really looking forward in a very positive way and with great emotions to the next steps we take together, either in the Humanistic Management Network or, Gerard, as you are here, and Edmund, who was here, in the Irish team around MARAI, deep institutional innovation for sustainability and human development. I'm really looking forward to the next steps taking together. Thanks a lot for all of you showing the interest to be here. I'm sure that you have a lot of questions left. We have the contact informations here, and I will stay on, and I will learn as you are during the next discussions how we can move on into our common goal. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Marcus. Thank you, Martin, who is no longer here, I believe, but let's thank him anyways. And Oran, thank you very much, and Ed, and of course also all of the students who've put a lot of work into that. It's I think we all know that a 3-4 minute video passes very quickly when you watch it, but to actually make that footage of a few minutes is a lot of work, and it was clear that you put a lot of thought into it also, and so congratulations and a big thank you to all of you. We are now going into